Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar, Diversity Bias in the Marketplace. It is my real pleasure to talk today to our IntelliPro's Vice Presidents, Antoine Brown and Kevin Sturge. Antoine is our VP of Business Engagement and Kevin is our VP of Customer Experience. Well, Antoine and Kevin, the reason why we actually wanted to do a webinar today is because we've talked a lot about diversity and inclusion as one of the most critical things for a healthy workplace. Yet, many companies don't get it right. Why is this topic still relevant?
Give this one to you, Kevin.
Okay. Hi, Sanya. Hi, Danny. Hi, Antoine. And it's super important for a whole host of things, right? And, I have to start by, I'm sort of pleased that we're talking about it, but also it's just a little bit worrying that we're still talking about it, right? So, but so much has been done. I think if you don't have a diverse workforce, either at the project level or the business unit level, the company level, you really start introducing blind spots into your team, into the company. So I think just through getting ideas and getting just challenging ideas, different ideas from different perspectives, you lose a lot of that if you have a workforce that's just of one type, right? Either all males or whatever. And I think how we behave also should be how the community is made up, right? So you want a good cross section of the communities that you work in and play in as well. So I think it's just a good balance both on the workplace and on the social place as well.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's so true. But let's perhaps define diversity. That's a question for both of you. What is, in your opinion, diversity?
I will say, well, with most companies, they look at diversity as being a matrix focused instead of being a relationship and growth. To me, diversity is a mixture of ideas, cultures, races, genders, economic statutes, other characteristics necessarily for promoting growth, learning among a group of people from different geographical backgrounds, as long as life experiences and beliefs.
Kevin, what about you?
I think that's a great question. And I think that there was something that made the news here last week with Coldplay, that great British band. They were on and they were talking about diversity and bias to a certain extent. And it really opened my eyes to something that they are just embracing deaf people in their concerts, right? They've been working with somebody making these sound jackets so that a deaf individual can feel the sound on their body. And it was their attempt to just be completely inclusive with everybody in our community, right? So we can all talk about, gender, we can talk about race, we can talk about how we identify ourselves, and disabilities, but really it's been just inclusive to everybody that's around, right? Regardless of any of those attributes. And I just thought that was humbling to me and sort of reminded me really what this conversation was about.
What a great example, Kevin. I really couldn't agree more. I want to now focus a little bit on being a diverse supplier. And Anton, you had some really great comments about it. What does it mean to be a diverse supplier?
Being a supplier diversity, it refers to the use of minority-owned business as a supplier. And the supplier diversity program is a proactive business program which encourages such use within the organization's supply chain to promote innovation through the introduction of new products, new partnerships, new solutions, and new services. For us at IntelliPro, being a diverse supplier means having the capability to provide our partners, as in clients, diverse talent. As you well know, that 63% of our consultants comes from diverse backgrounds.
Right, and we are truly very proud of that.
Yes.
And a little bit now about what has changed over the last decade. Kevin, you've worked for some most known companies in Silicon Valley. What are the major changes perhaps you've seen in the workforce?
Sure. If I can answer that question in a couple of ways, what I've seen, and I think where we're going to go as well, right? So, you know, what's great to see is that most, not all, large companies have a diverse and inclusive program, and typically visible, you know, on their website. So that's great to see. But I think the biggest change that I saw in my time with one of my employers is how there's now set goals on the usage of certified diverse suppliers, right? As Antoine described, right, we are a certified diverse company, but now there's goals that how much has to be spent with diverse companies. And I think that that's good because that levels the playing field for smaller companies to compete and to get a foothold in some of these large corporations. And that's growing. In my time Cisco, you know, started as a small percentage and just got bigger every year. And I really think that's a great idea. I think where we're going is we're not only going to look at, you know, whether the company is certified, is a certified diverse company, but I think also the makeup of the workforce as well. So I think that might be the next layer that's next, right? So it's okay to be veteran-owned, women-owned or whatever, but what is the makeup of the company beneath the ownership layer? And I think that might come next.
Absolutely. If I may add something, I feel like a lot of things are not just on paper. For example, the way we do things in marketing, we really get the input from our employees, what they truly care about, whether they care about their volunteer experience or some holidays, and creating that environment where they feel safe and they can come forward and talk about it is also something that needs to be considered, a safe place and being your authentic self at work. Okay, we mentioned certification, and I want to emphasize that IntelliPro has been certified as a minority-owned company by the Western Regional Minority Supplier Development Council. I'd like our audience to hear what it means and what the certification involved. Antoine, I think you were directly involved with the certification. Can you please comment a bit?
Yeah, so the certification is MBE. So it nationally certifies us to, as a minority-owned business, that we could work with, partner with minority-owned business to help our companies with minority-owned spends. The WRMSDC, is a great organization. They're recognized nationally through the MSDC. They support the growth and welfare of minority communities by championing the use of minority-owned businesses. What they provide my minorities businesses with the platform to be a voice and to be heard, while also connecting you to buyers, bids, contracts, business events such as expos, galas, seminars, and also matchmaking. Education and training is a part of the certificate as well, part of a plus benefit. Supplier referrals. Cecil Plummer is the president of that organization, and he do a great job with making those supplier referrals. Business events, private VIP events. They actually have an event going on right now, which is the first annual golf tournament. We wasn't able to attend this year due to prior engagements, but we plan to be back out there next year. And also, the most important is probably the nationally recognition of the Nixon Minority Business Certificate, which we renew every year.
That's fantastic. It seems
Can I come in on this, Sanya? I mean, because Antoine just triggered a thought about Cecil Plummer, who runs the Western region. Amazing individual. If you get the opportunity to watch some of his videos, you know, on their website, I'm sure they're on YouTube as well. But I've had the pleasure of seeing him pitch to companies of why they should have a diversity supplier program, and then pitch to the diverse suppliers, and you know, the two sides of the coin, right? He is just amazing, energetic. it's a passion for him, and really,
Yes.
puts it forward of why this is important. And it's not just important to the profitability of either of those sides of the coin, right? It's just doing the right thing, right? It goes back to how you started the call, Sanya, and you can feel that in all of the presentations that he makes. So, if I had a hat on, I'd like to take a hat off to Cecil and his team, but they do a pretty good job.
Yeah, great job. They do a very
It's
well
so
job.
great to hear there's such good commitment to diversity and inclusion. And we'll be putting some of these resources in chat, like some TED
Yeah,
Talks, and really, really
right.
inspiring.
Nice,
So
nice.
I think it comes down to commitment for real. And now I want to shift to something that is not often discussed, but it's
Oops.
really important to bring it up. And that would
Okay,
be bias.
okay.
What would be a recommendation? How can we best avoid bias in the workplace?
Are you starting, Antoine? Because that's a difficult question, and then I can think about my answer.
Why not? Go ahead. Thank Kevin later.
Okay, well, bias in the workplace, there's all type of different biases out there. I think we did touch on, I will touch on briefly, the unconscious bias. It's the bias the bias that you don't even think about that you're doing. As a manager and a leader, we have to think about this all the time. The way we treat the way we work with our team, the way we work with other teams, and also to me, an example. Take it outside of business, but from a personal level, I'm a high school football coach, and just the unconscious bias of how I deal with my players. Which player gets more playing time? If it's not, it's more than just being black and white, because that gray area still be in there where when you don't think about it, I'm being biased to this person, right? So I will say a way to attack it so people start recognizing it is there's tons of tools and trainings out there for organizations and individuals and if companies to start utilizing and making that accessible to their internal employees and start having discussions about it so we can start tackling it as a whole. And I think that's one of the ways to start to approach bias. And Kevin, I hope you had enough time to think of your answer.
No, great. And Sanya, I think we'd already answered this, earlier on in this conversation, right? By allowing bias to come out, you get the same narrow focus of that team or the organization of that company. And so, expanding it just takes on, a full platform of individuals. But I think also you have to watch how bias shows up in that, bring your authentic self to work, right? So that if you have that bias and you want everybody to look the same, right, to have a suit on or to wear a polo shirt on conferences, then you're showing a bias there straight away, right? Let people arrive in what they want to wear and not judge them because of that, right? And I think also to our industry as well, you often can see bias within job postings. And, there are a lot of tools and technology out there to help you minimize that. But you can see out on LinkedIn or any of the other great job boards, very masculine job postings. Some that are, we're looking for very aggressive, all in there type individuals as well. So, you can actually put a lot of bias into a job posting that again will exclude certain communities from applying for those roles as well, which is not a good thing.
Absolutely.
And I think Kevin touched on a good point right there. I will say, especially in our industry, being a solution and staffing provider, you probably see the most bias on job boards in the job description. Anytime it's excluding a certain group of people or individuals to not apply, that is a form of bias, right? So I think Kevin hit the nail on the head there.
Right. And I think we talked a little bit about certain things like you need to endure stress. And to me, that sends off that mental health alarm.
Totally, yeah.
Right. Right. So yeah, to be mindful and to be really checking on things would be probably one of the pieces of advice, right? And
and
other
Sonia,
advice you might be.
and Sonia, I know this is one of your hot topics, so I know, you're meant to be interviewing us, right? But let's turn the tables around, right? Those job postings that turn around like, you must be able to deal with pressure, available to respond, on call 24/7. That does impact mental health, right? And, here we are talking about diversity, but the other emerging subject is, mental health at work as well, and how we have to be, and we should be mindful of that stuff, what's going on and open to it. When you put out postings like that, I'm not going to apply for a job like that, right? Because I don't want to go into something that's a pressure cooker and put stress on, right? So, what do you see, that people are doing around mental health and stuff like that?
There's
Because
some great
I know it's a
examples.
hot topic for you.
Right. There's some great examples where there are programs in place. I believe Microsoft recently started a program where it's kind of peer guided program where people are incorporated, they're aware of people living with a severe mental illness and they're accommodating them. And because I've done some research in anthropology focused on mental health, I can definitely wholeheartedly say that there is a great potential there. People living with a mental illness have contributed greatly to the society, and by accommodating them, you are actually having a win-win situation where they can be contributing with their talent and with their ingenuity. Well, wonderful. We have a few more minutes before we open it to the panel discussion. I'd like to hear from both of you. What would be your advice to companies, to organizations? What should they do to promote better inclusion and diversity?
I will probably say, it's like I said earlier, it starts with the providing your organization with the opportunity, so with the tools that they need to get educated, and with the training to support it and show that you're big on individual growth, you're big on the community growth, and it starts there. Without the company providing that to their employees, they don't have an engine to go anywhere, right? So just providing that, and actually starting the training. Kevin can speak on what we did internally here. Well, he spearheaded it last year. What we did, we went around diversity training and stuff. So Kevin, you want to take that part over? Explain our part?
Yeah, so I think there's so many things, right? So many ways we can answer this, right? So we did introduce some mandatory training on diversity and unconscious bias as well, right? Just to highlight, what bias means, because what diversity means, because not everybody understands that. So I think that's a baseline of getting everybody in the company, at least aware and the minimum level of education. But I think, Antoine, you also answered it in the sense that do something to give back, right? I mean, it's okay to be diverse owned, but what are you doing about that? How are you giving back? We're starting to help people interview, right? So how do we train people to show up to interviews? What's in your background? What do you wear on the first interview and stuff like that? How to answer questions? That's the way we can give back, right? Allowing employees time, or just recognize employees when they do something or give back to their communities, and just say, thank you very much, right? That sort of stuff. And I think we also need to foster, from the buyer side, from these large companies side, we also need to foster, programs that do help smaller companies, minority companies, compete in this space.
Yeah.
Really wonderful advice. Well, thank you both. I think we're getting some questions from our audience. We have Danny Wong today, our IntelliPro's brand ambassador, helping us. Do we have any interesting questions, Danny, there?
Yes, thanks for the introduction, Sonia. So yeah, we have one question from the audience right here. So the first question is, as a global company, what are your unique challenges?
So Danny, remember the coaching I gave you earlier? The difficult questions you ask Antoine, the easy questions you ask me, right? So that one on global was obviously meant for Antoine, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that
Good
is,
answer, Danny. Yeah, great.
I will say, so for being a global company, having offices all over the world, working with different walks of different types of people, you have to be cautious. For an example, I run a team here in the US, and then I have a team in Canada. We have teams in China. So the way you manage, the way you talk, the way you interview, the way you interact on a day to day with all the different teams that we have, I believe, with 11 different countries, it's all different. And you have to be patient, and actually show interest and learn that culture and that market, because it's all different, right? So for me, that's what one of the biggest challenges is, putting on these different hats from countries that I've never been to, and learning their values and their core capabilities.
Absolutely.
Hey, Danny, I'd like to jump in on that as well, because yeah, Antoine's spot on, right? It's all that cultural thing and how you conduct interviews. But there's another thing that we often overlook, especially if you're working where you're headquartered as well, is be time zone aware. Right, just we're interviewing somebody now, and it's like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. for them. They've got different energy levels than 8 a.m. or lunchtime here on the West Coast, right? So, just be mindful of that, or even sometimes do some of those interviews in a sweet spot for their time zone, right? Which may be very early for you here or very late, but time zone is a critical one, and just be mindful of it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's obviously like a very big portion of, working as a global team with, understanding each other's time zone differences. So you're not calling your coworker at 3 a.m. over there.
Yeah.
I have a great example from my last company. I invited an Australian. He really made a big impact on me, to meet in on our Friday morning, West Coast Friday morning. He rejected that meeting and then suggested that I attended a meeting my Sunday. And I went to him, why have you invited me to a meeting on Sunday? And he said, well, you invited me to a meeting on Saturday, right? Because our Friday is their Saturday. And it's like, you never forget lessons like that, right? So, I mean, just be mindful of that.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about the time zone, because I have meetings like with my UK team, with the new UK business development team. We meet, well, that's not bad. That's 8 o'clock Pacific time in the mornings. But with the China team, it's 8 p.m., which is like 3 p.m. for them the next day. And that's because it's the time that works best off for them. So we meet 8 p.m. Pacific time, which, most is probably getting ready for bed on the next day. We're still rocking and rolling.
For sure. And then also just going back to what Antoine was saying about, having that cultural difference as well as the time zone difference. For example, last weekend it was Canada Day on July 1st and 4th of July. And so obviously a large portion of our team is working in North America, in both Canada and the US. But on that day, the Canadians cannot be reached. And then on the 4th, so that's also something to consider. We have a few more questions here from the audience here. So one of them asked, I have a colleague who sometimes make comments that are biased. What is the best way to let them know without being confrontational?
That's a Kevin question, because he was in procurement and HR for so long, as he had to deal with that.
See, Danny, this is why you say, Antoine, this one is for you. Right? I was coaching you on that. No, listen, Danny, it's a great question. So I appreciate whoever asked that. I think if you've got, if you're strong enough to actually mention it as those comments are being made, I would strongly recommend that, because you can do that in a friendly way. Hey, that comment wasn't appropriate, or did you consider this, right? Or, did you really mean to say that? And then people do think about it, right? But if you're not confident, or it's not the right environment to do that, I really think you have two courses of action. You have to talk to your immediate manager or someone in your management team, or you need to talk to somebody in HR, right? And you're really not trying to get an individual fired or anything like that. I'd never have that in my mindset. You're trying to make them better. You're trying to make the workplace a better workplace, a more comfortable workplace. So my advice is, if you feel confident in yourself, mention it there. Sometimes it's an easier way, but I also understand why some people can't do that. But some through your management chain or through your human resources team, someone there will be able to help.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that just, goes back to the previous question about, how can companies prepare? Let's say that company there, from this individual, haven't provided that type of training, right? So at the same time, you might be ignorant to that topic, but the ongoing training of it and just practicing it and communication, and just being aware.
For sure. Then we have something to add on to that is there a training that the audience can look into, if they wanted to be certified? What kind of companies do these kind of certifications?
Are you talking around the diversity side for individuals? Oh yeah, okay, sure. There's so many universities that now offer certified diversity training for practitioners and leads. You will find a host of those. I will pull some out and send them over to you, Danny. I can't think any off the top of my mind now, but there's also a whole series of certification for companies with employees that you can do to watch a video, take some tests, and just like I'm compliant with my diversity training for 2022. There's those sort of companies too, but the public training and commercial training areas through universities, we'll put a few links in the YouTube later.
All right, thanks for sharing, Kevin. The next question, and this is an open floor question, which is, how do you make sure you secure diverse talent?
It's all of what we just mentioned, Danny, right? It's first of all, making sure that your job posting is not biased and aimed at a certain race, a certain gender or whatever. I think the other thing is as well how Antoine answered the question, right? If we're looking for global talent, make sure we're interviewing that's appropriate for the country or region that they're calling from, being mindful of time zone, being respectful of timings, starting the interview on time, finishing on time, and doing that follow-up. Antoine, anything you want to add to that?
I think you touched a lot of the key points, and part of that too is like from an external point of what our delivery team find for not our competitors, I won't say competitors, for our clients.
Right.
They're very good at actually identifying the key points. We use a lot of AI technology. I think everybody knows that we're more of a technology firm than anything. But from the same standpoint, they do the due diligence of being proactive with these searches instead of just being reactive, I will say. Or they taking all the key points that they need to do without giving away the house or any internal trading secrets that we may discuss internally. But they do their due diligence from a whole part and with multiple eyes touching a lot of the resources as well.
That's great. And sorry to interrupt you. This webinar will be live. Please continue being in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn and follow our YouTube posts. We'll be organizing these videos, so please be on the lookout. It's been a pleasure having you, Kevin and Antoine, and thank you, Danny, for your help. I really look forward to talking with you some more about this topic. Well, have a wonderful day.
Great. Have a great week
on this talk show. Hope you guys also have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Thank you.